Well, Iran is at it again with its warships and now giving us some lip to Jennifer Griffin at the Pentagon with more. Hey, Jennifer.
Hi, Neil. Well, Iran is threatening that if the Saudis or Americans cause trouble for an Iranian cargo ship bound for Yemen, it will, quote, spark a fire. But senior Pentagon officials are not too concerned about this particular ship, whose name in Farsi means martyr. 3 weeks ago, when U.S. warships were sent to follow a suspected Iranian weapons convoy en route to the Houthis in Yemen, that convoy, Pentagon officials tell us, brazenly displayed rocket launchers and other weapons on their decks. That convoy eventually turned around. This ship, the Shahid, is apparently carrying humanitarian aid and reporters. Pentagon officials have called it a stunt. Quote, Iran is begging for us to board the ship. This is all for show, a senior U.S. official told Fox. The Iranian ship is currently in the Gulf of Oman, slated to meet up with Iranian warships off the coast of Yemen next week. The U.S. Navy has an amphibious ready group, the USS Iwo Jima, and 2,000 Marines off the coast of Yemen, making a potential showdown on the high seas with Iran's 34th Fleet a possibility. On the eve of a summit with Arab leaders at Camp David, President Obama had tough words for the Iranians during an interview with a Saudi newspaper. Quote, Iran clearly engages in dangerous and destabilizing behavior in different countries across the region. Iran is a state sponsor of terrorism. It helps prop up the Assad regime in Syria. It supports Hezbollah in Lebanon and Hamas in the Gaza Strip. It aids the Houthi rebels in Yemen. Adding to the tension, Neil, a top Iranian official warned the Saudi-led coalition not to intervene with the shipment. Quote, I bluntly declare that the self-restraint of the Islamic Republic of Iran is not limitless. Neil?
Jennifer Griffin, thank you. Meanwhile, Iran is threatening us. The president's calling Iran a state-sponsored terror. So why are we negotiating with them? To Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer is wondering the same thing. Yet we are, Colonel. And these are, we're told, extraneous events. Don't go obsess over them. Focus on this deal. Ignore this other stuff. What do you say?
Well, I wonder if we would have had the same attitude had the Soviets been doing breaching of the Berlin Wall, sending in infiltration squads into West Berlin during the start of negotiations. I mean, Neil, this is completely
that's a very good point. That's a very good point.
We would have never stood for this.
Yeah.
I mean, and I've talked to a number of Reagan officials who are mentors and friends, and Neil, look, everything was linked back in those days. If Gorbachev sneezed, it was linked to the negotiations. I mean, come on. So we've got to figure out here what we're doing. I mean, and to me, when the president now says Iran's a state sponsor of terror, after taking them off the watch list, I mean, what the heck are we doing? This very behavior, Neil, encourages the Iranians to do what they're doing and befuddles our allies. Nobody knows which way to go.
Well, certainly befuddles our Persian Gulf allies, many of whom are not showing up at this White House shindig today. We'll get into that a little bit later. But the idea being that we are making a serious error here and being played for fools. When those in that neighborhood say that, I'm wondering if there might be something to that.
Well, there is. I mean, look, these nations, the GCC, the coalition nations, Gulf coalition nations, really do feel that they have been our allies, been working with us for years. We've helped train their militaries. We've invested in them. They've invested in defense of their own region. And now they feel like, I think, they're being put out to pasture. And the Iranians, Neil, are on the path to having nuclear weapons. I'm one of those. I believe they probably have at least 1 or 2 warheads done. The question now becomes, can they mass produce them, and can they put them onto a delivery system? That's what the Saudis are waiting on. So the Saudis have already been paid the Pakistanis for nuclear weapons. So it's just a matter of time before, if we don't do something to help organize the Gulf states and help make sure that we are there with them, they will do things on their own, and we will not like the results.
Yeah, and they're buying time in the meantime.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, my friend. Well,
sure, Neil.
You want a big deal? Well, you always have to talk to the big cheese, right? President Obama talking Iran today with a couple of princes from Saudi Arabia, not the big one, the Saudi king. In fact, in the case of 3 other countries invited, not their leaders, not much better than their leaders' staffs. And that has us thinking Pat Cadell would weigh in on this, because I remember at the time of the Camp David Accords, it was Menachem Begin and Anwar Sadat. And in the early days, there was temptation on the part of both men to send underlings, but they didn't. And I'm wondering if that says something about how you go about these things, because if you don't have the big guys there, nothing gets done.
Well, that's exactly right, Neil. I mean, Camp David Accord really, the President Carter insisted on having Sadat and Begin come both, and they brought their key advisors. But the president had a relationship with each of them. Look, Sadat and Begin weren't even speaking at Camp David after the first day, but they trusted President Carter because he developed an element of trust. Same thing happened if you look at Bill Clinton, I think, when he was trying to negotiate the furtherance of Camp David at the end of his administration. Certainly George H. Bush, who, when he was putting the Gulf War Coalition the first time, and he had 13 Arab armies, including Syria, marching with the Americans.
But bottom line, they talk to the leaders. And Bill Clinton did that when he had the Egyptian. You got to have the leaders involved. And I'm not dismissing the importance of first ironing things out with staffs or underlings. But when you are at this stage where you
have to do it at the top.
Yeah, right?
You have to do it personally. And they don't trust the president. Look how the Saudis basically said to him, "Happy Mother's Day, we're not coming," after the White House, announced on Friday the king would be there. Look, they don't trust the president. They don't think we lead anymore. They've been unhappy for several years. They asked for some kind of defense shield, some kind of agreement we would protect them from the Iranians. And their feeling is very clear that the president just wants to use them as a prop for the Iranian nuclear deal, which frankly, Neil, I don't get after your last guest, after what the president just said about Iran. So
yeah, well, no, you're right about that. But Pat, let me just step back if you can help me with this one final issue, and that is whether the president actually might be helping Americans. The counter view is we as Americans are getting tired of being involved in this neighborhood and doing all their policing and doing all their grunt work and blood work and sacrificing American lives. Let them deal with this. Why should it always be us? And maybe that is his message, and maybe that has more support than we appreciate. What do you think?
Well, that might be in terms of on the ground, but the problem is the vacuum created right now, particularly if Iran has nuclear weapons or will soon have them. The Saudis are going to go, and they're already trying to procure the parts they need for this. If the United States can't keep stability, help them keep stability, there's a reason that people look at that region as a place where if we end up having the world blow up, it will blow up there. And I think events are showing this is the case now.
It's interesting. We had a segment on what Jimmy Carter could teach Barack Obama. All right. Thank you, my friend.
Yes, exactly.
Always good having you, Patrick.